They thought she was just another defendant they could push around. They thought the badge made them untouchable. They were wrong. In the quiet halls of the 4th District Courthouse, Officer Rhett Harlan made the biggest mistake of his life. He raised his hand against Member of Parliament Serena Blake. He expected her to break. Instead, he woke up on the floor with his career and his future in ruins. This is not merely a story about a fight. It is the story of karma's raw, unstoppable force. This is what happens when the system tries to crush the wrong woman. Rain poured in heavy sheets across the outskirts of Oak Creek, a town caught between fading old money and the slow rot of abandoned factories. The sky was a dull, colourless grey that drained the life from everything it touched. Serena Blake gripped the steering wheel of her modest Ford sedan, her knuckles pale. She did not look like the force of nature she had become. A simple beige raincoat covered her business suit, her hair pulled into a tight, practical bun. To most eyes, she might have seemed like any other professional woman, heading home after a long day. But those who looked closer, especially into her eyes, saw something harder, something forged. She was the newly elected Member of Parliament for the district, a woman who had fought her way out of the projects of East Oak Creek, through law school on nothing but scholarships and sheer will, and finally into the halls of power. She had never been invited into the old boys' club. She was the disruption they feared. And Officer Rhett Harlan hated disruptions more than anything. Harlan sat in his patrol car, tucked behind a billboard for a personal injury lawyer. He was a thick man, thick neck, thick arms, thick skull. He had worn the uniform long enough to know precisely how far he could bend the rules before they broke. In the precinct, they called him the Bulldog. He was not clever, but he was loud. And in Oak Creek, loud men often got their way. He watched the Ford pass. The driver was technically speeding, though only by a breath. What mattered to Harlan was the profile behind the wheel. A black woman in a decent car who carried herself with quiet confidence. It irritated him. The afternoon was slow, and he felt the itch to remind someone who was in charge. His lights flared, blue and red slicing through the grey rain. Serena glanced at the rearview mirror and sighed. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. She pulled over carefully, killed the engine, and placed her hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. She knew the drill. She had taught the drill to others. Harlan took his time walking up. He adjusted his belt, hitched his pants, and tapped the glass with his flashlight, even though daylight still lingered. Serena rolled the window down. "Good afternoon, officer. Was I speeding?" Harlan leaned in, letting rain drip from his hat brim into the car. He chewed his gum with wet, deliberate smacks. "License and registration," he said flatly. Serena moved slowly, narrating every motion the way she had learned to do when representing young clients who never got the benefit of the doubt. "I'm reaching into my glove box." She handed over the documents. Harlan glanced at the name, Serena Blake. It meant nothing to him. He did not follow politics. He followed sports and precinct gossip. He spotted the special designation on the registration plate, but either misread it or did not care. "What's this? Military police?" he scoffed. "You don't look military. Member of Parliament," Serena corrected, her voice cool and level. "I represent this district." Harlan laughed, a harsh bark. "Is that right? Well, Member of Parliament, you were speeding. And my speedometer said otherwise, officer." Are you calling me a liar? His tone shifted in an instant. The bully had stepped forward. I'm stating a fact. If you issue the ticket, I will contest it in court. That is my right. Harlan's face flushed. He was not used to being challenged, least of all by a woman on a rainy afternoon. He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. You think you're special because you've got some fancy title? I'm the law. You're just another speeder. He snatched the license back. Step out of the car. Serena raised her eyebrows. For a speeding ticket? That is not standard procedure, officer. She glanced at his badge. Harlan, I smell alcohol. He lied smoothly, the way he had done many times before, the universal excuse to escalate. Serena did not drink. She had not touched a drop in years. She knew exactly what this was. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out into the rain. She stood tall, spine straight, refusing to shiver in the cold. Turn around. Hands on the hood, Harlan barked. He patted her down far more roughly than necessary, his hand lingering at her waist in a deliberate show of power. Serena did not flinch. She was cataloguing everything, the stale tobacco on his breath, the unauthorized predator patch on his vest, the body camera that was conveniently switched off. You're resisting, he whispered against her ear. I am standing perfectly still, Serena replied, her voice dropping lower. Officer Harlan, I strongly suggest you write the citation and let me go. You are making a mistake. Is that a threat? Harlan spun her around and slammed her against the wet metal of the car. It's legal counsel, Serena said. He cuffed her wrists tight, the metal biting into her skin. Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and let's add assault on an officer for the attitude. He shoved her into the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut, sealing her away from the rain. Serena did not cry. She did not panic. She stared through the mesh divider, her eyes narrowing with cold focus. Harlan climbed into the front seat, chuckling to himself as he grabbed the radio. Dispatch, bringing one in. Unruly female. Agitated. He thought he had bagged a trophy. He had no idea he was transporting a live grenade. The holding cell at the 4th precinct smelled of bleach and despair. Serena had already been fingerprinted and photographed. Her blazer had been taken. She sat on the cold bench in her white blouse, now streaked with rain and grime. She had used her single phone call to reach Sebastian Crow. Sebastian was not a politician. He was a shark in a 3-piece suit, her mentor from law school days, and now one of the most feared civil rights attorneys in the state. When he arrived, the atmosphere in the precinct shifted. The desk sergeant, Cyrus Lane, sat up straighter than he had in years. Sebastian did not raise his voice. He whispered, and when Sebastian Crow whispered, careers quietly ended. By the time Serena was released on bail, her wrists were bruised. Sebastian waited by his car. They charged you with assault? He asked, lighting a cigarette. He said I lunged at him. No dash cam footage. He claimed it malfunctioned. Of course it did. Sebastian exhaled smoke into the night. Judge Voss is presiding. You know him? Serena gave a bitter laugh. Malcolm Voss, the man who believes the old days never ended. Yes, I know him. It's a setup, Serena. Harlan and Voss play poker together. The union is already spinning this. They leaked the mugshot. Drunk MP attacks hero cop. It's all over the morning news. Serena looked at her phone for the first time. A wall of hate greeted her. Calls for resignation, racist vitriol. Buried among them were messages of support from the people who actually knew her. Let them spin, she said, sliding into the car. I want my day in court. Expedited hearing. I want Harlan on the stand. You're playing with fire, Sebastian warned. Voss will let him do whatever he wants in that courtroom. Good, Serena replied, staring out at the passing streetlights. I want him comfortable. I want him arrogant. The courtroom was packed. Press filled every seat. The story was too delicious to resist. A rising black female politician brought low by her own rage. Serena sat at the defense table in a fresh navy suit, looking calm and impeccable. Sebastian arranged his papers with surgical precision beside her. Across the aisle, Officer Rhett Harlan sat in his dress uniform, every inch the American hero. He had even placed a small bandage on his cheek for an injury that did not exist. He smiled at the jury, then at the gallery. When his eyes found Serena, the smile twisted into a sneer. Judge Malcolm Voss swept in, his face like crumpled paper, his eyes empty of warmth. All rise, the bailiff intoned. Be seated. Voss looked over his spectacles at Serena. Ms. Blake, a disturbing set of charges for an elected official. They are fabricated charges, Your Honour, Sebastian said, rising. We will see. Voss dismissed him with a wave. Prosecution. Call your witness. The prosecutor, Declan Shaw, a young man who looked exhausted, called Officer Harlan. Harlan took the stand, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Serena watched him closely, reading every smirk, every lean back in the chair. He felt safe. Officer Harlan, Shaw began. Tell us what happened. Harlan launched into his performance. I stopped the defendant for erratic driving, dangerous speeds. When I approached, she was belligerent, screaming. I tried to de-escalate, but she smelled of alcohol. When I asked her to step out, she swung at me and scratched my face. I had to subdue her for her own safety. The gallery murmured. The press scribbled. Liar, Serena whispered. Objection, Shaw shouted. The defendant is intimidating the witness. Sustained, Voss barked, banging his gavel. Ms. Blake, one more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. Serena stood anyway. Your Honour, he is lying under oath. Request to treat the witness as hostile. Denied. Sit down, or you will be in a cell before lunch. It continued. Harlan painted her as hysterical, animalistic, using every coded word he knew. Finally, cross-examination arrived. Instead of Sebastian, Serena rose. Your Honour, I will represent myself for the cross. Sebastian hesitated, then nodded. He understood she needed this. Serena walked to the centre of the room and stopped close to the witness stand, close enough to smell Harlan's cheap cologne. Officer Harlan, she began, her voice clear and carrying without a microphone. You stated I scratched you. That's right. He touched the fake bandage. And yet my fingernails are, and have been for years, short. Military regulation length. She held up her hands for the jury. How did I scratch you, officer? You used your keys, he stammered. My keys were in the ignition. You admitted that in your police report. She picked up the report from the evidence table. Page 2. Keys remained in vehicle. So, are you lying now, or were you lying then? Harlan's face flushed. I don't remember every detail. It was a chaotic situation. Chaotic because you made it so, Serena pressed. Officer, isn't it true you have excessive force complaints in your file? Objection, Shaw shouted. Relevance. Sustained, Voss snapped. Move on, Ms. Blake. Serena stepped even closer, inside Harlan's personal space now. You like to hurt people, don't you, Rhett? You like to feel big. I protect this city. Harlan spat, composure cracking. You protect nothing. You're a bully with a badge, and you picked the wrong victim. Harlan leaned forward over the railing, his face twisted. You listen to me, you little... Judge Voss warned, the judge said, but he did not bang the gavel. He looked almost amused. Say it, Serena challenged, voice low, meant only for him. Say what you really want to say. You should have stayed in the gutter where you came from, Harlan hissed, loud enough for the front row to hear. Is that a legal opinion? Serena mocked. That was the breaking point. The bulldog snapped. Harlan stood up in the witness box. You shut your mouth. He did not think. He did not check the cameras. He simply reacted. He lunged over the low wooden railing, his heavy hands swinging in a wide, open arc. Crack. It was not a punch. It was a slap. Disrespectful, dismissive, open-handed, across Serena Blake's face. The sound echoed off the mahogany walls like a gunshot. Serena's head snapped sideways. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to still. Judge Voss froze, gavel hovering. The prosecutor dropped his pen. Time itself seemed to stop. Harlan stood there breathing hard, hands still raised, realizing what he had just done. He had physically assaulted a member of Parliament in open court, on camera, in front of a judge. But the story was never about the slap. It was about what came next. Serena slowly turned her head back to face him. Her lip was bleeding, a bright drop of red running down her chin. Her eyes were absolute zero. She no longer looked like a politician. She looked like the soldier she had once been. Mistake, she whispered. The silence lasted 2 seconds. Then Harlan, too arrogant to retreat, doubled down. I told you to shut up, he roared, raising his hand again, this time clenched into a fist. He stepped down from the witness box, towering over her. The bailiffs were moving, but they were old and slow, 20 feet away. Harlan was 2 feet away. Serena did not wait for rescue. She dropped her weight, heels digging into the parquet. She had spent years in the military police corps, some of them as a close-quarters combat instructor. She had not called on those skills in a long while, but muscle memory never forgets. As Harlan threw the sloppy haymaker toward her jaw, Serena stepped in. She parried his arm with her left forearm, a sharp, violent block that knocked his strike off course. He stumbled forward. Serena pivoted, hips generating torque. This was not a slap. This was not a scratch. She drove her right fist straight into the button, the nerve cluster at the point of his chin. A textbook cross delivered with piston precision. Thud! The sound was sickeningly wet and heavy. Harlan's eyes rolled back instantly. His knees buckled. He did not fall gracefully. He crumpled face first like a felled tree, hitting the floor with a vibration that shook the tables. He did not move. Serena stood over him. She adjusted her blazer. She wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand. Then she looked up at Judge Voss. Your Honour, she said, voice steady though her chest heaved. I am placing this officer under citizen's arrest for assault and battery. I claim self-defense under the statutes of this state. Pandemonium erupted. Cut the cameras, someone yelled. Get a medic, shouted another. 2 bailiffs finally reached her, hands hovering over their tasers, terrified. Don't, Serena warned, holding up a finger. I am the victim here. He attacked me. You all saw it. Sebastian was already at her side, shielding her. If you touch her, I will sue this county into the Stone Age, he roared. He struck an elected official. We have it on video. From the gallery, reporter Nova Ellis was live streaming on her phone, hands shaking. Are you seeing this? MP Blake just knocked out Officer Harlan. He is out cold. He is not moving. The video was already spreading like wildfire. Harlan groaned on the floor, trying to push himself up, then flopped back down, drool pooling on the expensive rug. His predator persona had evaporated. He looked exactly like what he was, a bully who finally got hit back. Judge Voss slammed his gavel, voice shaking. Clear the court. Everyone out. Bailiffs, take Miss Blake into custody. Custody! Serena shouted over the noise. For what? Defending myself? Contempt. Assault. Voss was panicking. He knew his friend was in the wrong, but the system protected its own. Get her out of my sight. The bailiffs moved in. Serena placed her hands behind her back voluntarily. She wanted the image. She wanted the world to see her being handcuffed, while the man who had assaulted her was tended by paramedics. As they led her out the side door, she looked back at Nova Ellis's phone camera. She did not smile. She simply nodded. The war had only just begun. Serena was returned to the same holding cell, but the mood had changed completely. The officers did not sneer or joke. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and awe. Word travels fast in a precinct. She had knocked out Harlan, the bulldog, the man who bench-pressed heavy weights, with one punch. Inside the cell, Serena sat on the cot, icing her throbbing hand with a cold water bottle a sympathetic rookie had given her. It was worth it. Outside, the world caught fire. Nova Ellis's video hit social media and then every news outlet. The headline was everywhere. Courtroom knockout. MP Blake floors corrupt cop. The blue wall of silence tried to activate. Union President Roland Pike held a press conference on the courthouse steps. This was a vicious, unprovoked attack on a decorated officer, he lied, sweating under the lights. Officer Harlan was attempting to maintain order. Miss Blake used lethal martial arts techniques. We are calling for her immediate removal from office and felony charges. But the internet had already enhanced the courtroom audio. They heard Harlan's whisper, "You should have stayed in the gutter where you came from." They heard the slap. The narrative was collapsing. In the hospital, Rhett Harlan woke with a wired jaw, guarded by two sympathetic officers. His head felt split open. He checked his phone. His inbox was full of hate and fear, not support. A text from Judge Voss read simply, "You idiot. You ruined everything. Keep your mouth shut." Harlan threw the phone against the wall. He was the victim. Why was no one seeing that? Back at the jail, Sebastian Crow arrived with a writ of habeas corpus, looking energized. "You're trending in multiple countries," he said through the bars. "Is that good?" Serena asked, still icing her hand. "It's leverage. But they're going to play dirty, Serena. They'll dig up everything. Your ex-husband, your brother's old drug charge, everything. My brother has been clean for years. My ex-husband is ancient history. Let them dig. What about Harlan? He's in the hospital. Concussion, broken jaw, ego death." Sebastian grinned. "But here's the real news. Since the video went viral, my phone has been ringing non-stop. Not reporters, victims of Harlan. Dozens of them. People who were too scared to speak before. A shopkeeper he extorted. A teenager he beat in an alley. A woman whose sexual assault case he buried because the suspect was his cousin." Serena's eyes hardened. "Get their statements. All of them. I'm already on it. But Serena, there's something else. Sebastian lowered his voice. One of the callers was a clerk for Judge Voss. She says she has proof that Voss and Harlan were running a racket. Traffic fines, bail bonds, a pipeline of money. Serena stood, pain in her hand forgotten. That's it. That's the kill shot. We need the evidence, Sebastian warned. And Voss knows we're coming. He just signed a warrant to search your home. They're looking for drugs, weapons, anything to discredit you. Let them search. My house is clean. But if they plant something, I have a private investigator watching your house right now, Sebastian assured her. If they plant a toothpick, we'll know. The door to the cell block opened. Chief Gideon Pierce walked in, looking exhausted. He was a man who had tried to walk the line, but the line had just been erased. Miss Blake, he said, you're being released on your own recognizance. No bail? Serena asked. The district attorney decided it wasn't prudent given public sentiment. Pierce unlocked the cell himself. Chief, Serena said, stepping out, I want Harlan's badge, and I want Voss's gavel. Pierce looked at her. He did not argue. If half of what I'm hearing is true, Miss Blake, you might just get them. Serena walked out of the precinct into a sea of flashbulbs. The crowd was massive, chanting her name. She did not wave. She did not smile. She walked to the microphones. Today a man thought he could put me in my place, she said, voice carrying over the crowd. He thought his badge gave him the right to assault a citizen. He found out he was wrong. But this isn't about me. This is about every person in Oak Creek who has been slapped, beaten, or silenced by men like Rhett Harlan. I am not just going to fight my charges. I am going to burn their corruption to the ground. If you have a story, come to me. Do not be afraid anymore. The bully is down. The crowd roared. Across town in a dimly lit office, Judge Malcolm Voss was pouring a drink. He was not finished. He picked up a burner phone. We have a problem. The Blake woman. She needs to disappear. Not a hit. That's too loud. Make it a scandal. Destroy her credibility tonight. The voice on the other end was raspy. It'll cost you. Just do it. Voss slammed the phone down. Serena had won the fight. The war for her life was entering its most dangerous phase. The attack on her reputation began not with a scream, but with a whisper. Digital and insidious. Serena was awake in her modest two-story colonial. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by cold, gnawing anxiety. Outside, 3 houses down, an unmarked sedan sat. Talon Riggs, the private investigator Sebastian had hired, a former DEA agent who missed nothing, was the only reason she could even try to sleep. Inside, her laptop pinged. Then again, then a cascade, bank alerts, login attempts, news alerts. A tabloid blog funded by dark money tied to the police union had dropped its bombshell. Exclusive, the secret life of MP Serena Blake. Embezzlement, drug money. The article was a masterpiece of fabrication. It claimed her law school tuition had come not from scholarships, but from illicit earnings tied to a local gang. It posted doctored bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Clumsy, but to the untrained eye, it looked damning. Serena called Sebastian. He answered on the first ring. I see it. Don't panic. It's Lucas Trent's work. Trent, the fixer. He's Voss's clean-up guy. A slimeball who hacks for hire. This is the scandal they promised. They're trying to muddy the waters so any jury thinks you're a criminal. It's all fake, Sebastian. My law school was paid for by Pell Grants and 3 jobs. Truth doesn't matter to them. Mud does. But they made a mistake. They forged a signature on one of those bank documents. They used the signature of a bank manager named Robert Holloway. Holloway died years ago. The document is dated later. Serena exhaled. It's sloppy, desperate, but Serena, this is just the distraction. While we fight this, they're going after the real threat. The clerk. Exactly. Her name is Isla Bennett. She's been hiding in a motel on the edge of town. She called me. She's terrified. A patrol car has driven past her room multiple times tonight. They're hunting her, Serena. Serena stood, decision made. I'm going to get her. No, Sebastian snapped. You are under a microscope. If you're seen anywhere near a witness, they'll revoke your release. You go back to jail. If they get to her, there is no case, and she dies. I know how these men work, Sebastian. Rhett was the muscle, but Voss is the brain. He won't hesitate to silence her. Serena grabbed her keys. Tell Talon to follow me. I'm not going alone. The Starlight Motel was a relic of another era. Peeling paint and flickering neon. Rain had started again. Serena parked her Ford around the block. Talon Riggs pulled up behind her in his sedan, a large man in a rain slicker. This is a bad idea, MP Blake, he grunted. Politics is a bad idea, Talon. This is a rescue mission. They moved through the shadows toward room 114. The curtains were drawn tight. Serena knocked the specific rhythm Sebastian had arranged. The door cracked open. A chain rattled. A terrified eye peered out. Isla, Serena whispered. The door flew open. Isla Bennett was a small woman in her late 30s, trembling, clutching a thick leather-bound ledger to her chest like a shield. She looked like a rabbit in a trap. They know I'm here, she sobbed, pulling Serena inside. I saw Harlan's partner, Officer Nolan. He was here. We're getting you out, Serena said, voice calm and commanding. Talon, check the perimeter. Wait. Isla's hands shook as she held out the book. You need to see this before we go. You need to know what you're up against. Serena opened the ledger. It was not just traffic tickets. It was a systematic accounting of corruption spanning years. Judge Voss kickbacks, Officer Harlan collections, councilman names, a roadmap of the city's rot, prominent businessmen, politicians, police brass, millions laundered through bail bonds and seized assets. This brings down half the city, Serena whispered. That's why they want me dead. Isla wept. Suddenly, glass shattered. The window exploded inward. A canister hissed across the carpet. Tear gas. Get down, Talon roared, bursting back into the room. Two men kicked the door in. They wore ski masks and tactical gear, silencers in hand. Serena did not think. She grabbed the heavy lamp from the bedside table and swung it at the first intruder. It struck his shoulder, throwing off his aim. The bullet buried itself in drywall. Talon was a blur. He tackled the second gunman, slamming him against the dresser. Run! Get her out! He shouted. Serena grabbed Isla's arm. Move! They scrambled out the back window into the alley. Gas filled the room, choking them. They ran through the rain, slipping on wet pavement. My car! Serena yelled, pointing to the end of the alley. They reached the Ford. Serena shoved Isla into the passenger seat and vaulted behind the wheel. She cranked the engine just as the first gunman stumbled out, raising his weapon. Serena slammed the car into reverse. She did not aim to hit him. She was not a killer, but she came close enough to make him dive. She spun the car around, tires screaming, and tore onto the main road. Call Sebastian, she shouted to Isla. heart hammering. "Tell him we have the book. Tell him to get the feds now." Oak Creek awoke to a different kind of storm. Serena had not gone home. She had driven straight to the federal building in the state capitol. She walked into the FBI field office covered in soot, clutching the ledger, Isla Bennett at her side, Sebastian Crow meeting them at the door. By midday, the landscape of the city had changed. In his hospital room, Rhett Harlan lay with his jaw wired shut, sipping a protein shake through a straw. The pain was excruciating, but the silence from his supposed friends was worse. Judge Voss had not visited. The union rep had stopped answering texts. The door opened. Harlan expected a nurse. Instead, two men in windbreakers entered. Yellow letters on their jackets read FBI. Harlan's eyes widened. He tried to speak, but only a mumble came out. "Rhett Harlan," the lead agent, Silas Grant, asked, "You are under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, deprivation of rights under colour of law, and attempted murder." Harlan shook his head frantically. "Attempted murder," Grant continued coldly. "The men at the motel gave you up. They said you hired them from your hospital bed. We have the phone records." "It was a lie," Harlan tried to say, but the words would not come. Voss had hired them, but the feds knew how to play the game. They needed Harlan to flip. "Judge Voss says you went rogue," Grant said, leaning over the bed. "He's cutting a deal right now. He says you were the mastermind. He says he was scared of you." The betrayal hit harder than Serena's fist ever had. After years of loyalty, after all the dirty work, Voss was pinning everything on him. Harlan's face turned purple with rage. He motioned for pen and paper. The agent handed him a notepad. Harlan wrote furiously, the pen tearing through pages. He did not write a confession. He wrote a list, dates, times, locations of buried cash, and one sentence at the bottom: "I will bury Malcolm Voss." At the same time, Judge Malcolm Voss sat in his chambers, rubbing his hands in preparation for the afternoon session. He felt invincible. He assumed the problem at the motel had been handled. He assumed Serena was dead or running. He heard commotion in the outer office. "You can't go in there," his secretary screamed. The heavy oak doors smashed open. It was not just the FBI. It was state troopers, internal affairs. A sea of uniforms flooded his sanctuary. "Malcolm Voss," Agent Grant's partner announced. "Step away from the desk." Voss stood, face a mask of indignation. "Do you know who I am? I am the presiding judge of the 4th District. Get out of my chambers." "You are a suspect in a RICO investigation," the agent said, walking around the desk. He grabbed the gavel, the same gavel Voss had used to silence so many victims, and dropped it into an evidence bag. "This is preposterous. I'll have your badge." "You'll have plenty of time to draft the paperwork in federal prison," the agent replied. "Cuff him." As they marched Voss out of the courthouse in handcuffs, the lobby was filled with people. Not just press, but the community. Hundreds. The shopkeeper Harlan had extorted. Families of kids Voss had sent away on minor charges for maximum sentences. Serena Blake stood at the front of the crowd, her arm in a sling from the rough night, looking tired but unbreakable. Voss saw her. He stopped. He looked at the woman he had tried to crush. Serena did not shout. She did not gloat. She simply held up her phone. On the screen was a live news feed. The headline read, "Operation Clean Sweep. Judge and officer indicted." Voss slumped. The arrogance evaporated. He looked old, frail, and pathetic. With Harlan's testimony and the ledger, the dominoes fell fast. The police chief resigned in disgrace. The union president was indicted for misappropriation. Other officers were suspended pending investigation. But the sweetest victory was the exoneration. The charges against Serena were dropped with prejudice. The district attorney, trying to save his own skin, held a press conference apologizing to her personally. Miss Blake acted in self-defense against an unlawful assault, the DA stated. She is a hero. Serena watched from her living room. Sebastian sat beside her, pouring 2 glasses of sparkling cider. You did it, kid. You took on the machine. And you won. We won, Serena corrected. But it's not over. Harlan and Voss still have to face a jury. They will, and you're going to be the star witness. When the day of final reckoning arrived, the federal courthouse in the capital was surrounded by news vans stretching for blocks. This was not merely a trial. It was a reckoning. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was thick and heavy with anticipation. The gallery was packed. Activists in justice for Blake shirts, law students taking notes, ordinary citizens who had driven miles to witness the end. Serena Blake sat at the prosecution table, posture rigid as steel. She wore white, a deliberate choice. It was not the colour of surrender, it was the colour of truth. Beside her, lead federal prosecutor Sienna Vale organised her files with lethal calm. Across the aisle, the defence table looked like a funeral parlour. Rhett Harlan was unrecognisable. The uniform that had once been his armour was gone, replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. Months in solitary for his own protection had hollowed him out. He had lost weight. His skin was sallow. His eyes darted, unable to settle. The bulldog was gone. Only a frightened animal remained. Judge Malcolm Voss sat 2 chairs away, separated by a high-priced defence attorney who clearly wished he were elsewhere. Voss tried to maintain the facade of the distinguished jurist, but his hands trembled uncontrollably. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Federal Judge Lena Voss entered, a woman known for zero tolerance of theatrics. She took a seat, eyes sweeping the room before landing on the defendants. "Be seated. We are here for closing arguments and the verdict in United States versus Malcolm Voss and Rhett Harlan." The trial had been a marathon of damning evidence. The jury had seen the ledger Isla Bennett had saved, the bank records, the testimony of those Harlan had terrorized. But the image burned into every mind was the video of the slap. It was time for Serena to take the stand one last time, not as a defendant, but as the voice of every victim. Prosecutor Sienna Vale stood. The government calls Serena Blake. Serena walked to the witness stand. The silence was absolute. Every eye fixed on her. She swore the oath, her voice clear and resonant, reaching the back of the gallery without amplification. "Miss Blake," Vale began gently, "the defence has argued that Officer Harlan was under extreme stress. They have argued that Judge Voss was unaware of his subordinates' actions. After everything you have seen, everything you have survived, what do you have to say to that?" Serena turned her head. She looked directly at the jury box. 12 strangers who held the fate of the city in their hands. Then she slowly turned her gaze to Rhett Harlan. For the first time in a long while, he looked up. Their eyes locked. He flinched. "I have spent my life believing in the law," Serena began, voice low but carrying quiet power. I climbed from the bottom of Oak Creek to the halls of Parliament, believing that the system works if you fight for it. But when Officer Harlan raised his hand to me in that courtroom, when he struck me across the face, he wasn't just hitting a woman. He wasn't just hitting an MP. She paused, letting the words settle. He was striking every person in this city who has ever been too afraid to speak. He was banking on my fear. He thought that because he wore a badge, he owned my dignity. He thought that because Judge Voss sat on the bench, the truth didn't matter. Serena leaned forward slightly, hands gripping the railing. I didn't hit him back out of anger. I didn't knock him out because I wanted to hurt him. I did it because in that split second, I had to prove that we are not property. We are citizens. And when the law becomes a weapon used by criminals in uniform, it is the duty of the righteous to break that weapon. A juror in the front row wiped a tear. Even Judge Lena Voss seemed to hold her breath. They aren't victims of stress, Serena finished, voice hardening into diamond. They are the architects of their own destruction. The jury deliberated for hours. When the buzzer sounded, the atmosphere shifted from tension to electricity. The defendants were ordered to stand. Harlan needed help. His legs had turned to water. Voss stood stiffly, staring at a spot on the wall, refusing to accept reality. The foreman, a mechanic from a neighbouring county, rose with the verdict sheet, hands shaking. In the matter of the United States versus Rhett Harlan, he read, on count 1, conspiracy to violate civil rights, guilty. On count 2, wire fraud, guilty. On count 3, assault on a federal witness, guilty. Every guilty landed like a hammer. Harlan let out a low, keening sound, like a wounded animal. He slumped forward, forehead hitting the table. The tough guy who had terrorized Oak Creek dissolved into a sobbing mess. In the matter of Malcolm Voss, the foreman continued. Voss stiffened. On count 1, racketeering, guilty. On count 2, money laundering, guilty. On count 3, solicitation of murder, guilty. Voss's face went grey. The facade crumbled. He looked suddenly ancient, a man watching his legacy turn to ash. He was looking at decades. He would die in a concrete box. Judge Lena Voss banged her gavel, a sound of finality. Sentencing is set for next month. The defendants are remanded to custody immediately. Court is adjourned. The gallery erupted. Not a cheer, but a collective exhale of relief, a release of years of pent-up trauma. As the marshals moved in to shackle the men, a strange, quiet moment occurred. As they dragged Harlan past the prosecution table, he stopped. He dug his heels in. He looked at Serena. His eyes were red, wet, filled with terrifying clarity. "I'm sorry," he whispered, raspy and broken. "I didn't know." Serena stood. She towered over him in that moment. Not physically, but spiritually. She looked at the man who had tried to destroy her life. She did not offer forgiveness. Forgiveness was cheap, and this had cost too much. "You knew Rhett," she said, voice cold as winter. "You just didn't think it would cost you anything. Do your time and learn to be a man." The marshals yanked him away. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them. When Serena pushed open the double doors and stepped into the afternoon sun, the roar was deafening. Cameras flashed like lightning. Microphones thrust toward her, but she looked past the press to the people. Hundreds of them. The shopkeeper, the teenager from the alley, Isla Bennett, now in witness protection, watching from a secure location. Sebastian Crowe stood beside her, looking like a proud father, lighting a victory cigar despite the signs. Serena raised a hand. The crowd quieted. "They want to know how it feels to win," she said, voice amplified. "This isn't winning. Winning would be if this never happened. Winning would be if we didn't need a ledger to prove that justice should be blind. This victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Isla Bennett, who risked her life for the truth. It belongs to every person who was told to sit down and shut up, but stood up anyway." She looked directly into the news cameras, eyes blazing. "We have cleaned the house. Now it is time to rebuild the foundation. The bully is down. Let's make sure he never gets back up." After the dust settled, the scandal of the 4th District faded from the headlines, replaced by the steady, unglamorous work of reform. Serena Blake sat on the porch of her home on a crisp evening. Leaves turned gold and crimson, drifting onto the lawn where investigator Talon Riggs, now her permanent chief of staff and head of security, was raking them into careful piles. Serena held a tablet in her lap. The screen showed the final vote count from the Capitol. The Blake Act had passed, a landmark piece of legislation, mandatory body cameras with severe penalties for tampering, the end of qualified immunity for violent offences, and independent oversight committees for every precinct in the state. A car pulled up. Sebastian Crowe stepped out, moving slower than he once had, but with the same sharp glint in his eye. He walked up the porch steps and settled into the rocking chair beside her. "You saw the vote?" he asked. "I saw it. They're calling you the Iron MP in the papers." Sebastian chuckled. "And the party leadership called me again. They don't just want you for Senate, Serena. They're talking governor in the coming years." Serena looked out at the quiet street. A patrol car drove by slowly. The officer inside saw her on the porch. He did not sneer. He did not intimidate. He simply slowed, gave a respectful nod, and continued on his way. Serena smiled. It was not the smile of a politician. It was the smile of a soldier who had survived the war. "Governor," she laughed, the sound light and free. "One fight at a time, Sebastian. One fight at a time." She looked down at her right hand. The knuckles were fully healed, the skin smooth, but beneath the surface the bone was denser, stronger than before. The system had tried to break her. It had tried to slap her down into the gutter. Instead, it had forged her into something unbreakable. And there it is, the story of how Serena Blake took a slap to the face and turned it into a revolution. Officer Harlan and Judge Voss thought they were untouchable. They learned the hard way. When you strike a woman of steel, you are the one who breaks. This was never just a fight in a courtroom. It was a battle for the soul of a city. Serena proved that karma is not luck. It is what happens when good people decide they have had enough. If this story ignited something in you, if you believe justice must reach everyone, no matter how much power they hold, then hit that like button. It helps us share more stories like this. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale of courage and accountability. What would you have done in Serena's shoes? Would you have hit back? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one with care. Stay strong, stay safe, and never let them break you.